Hi there, this is Linda and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be setting up my Mini-Me scrapbook albums for 2026 and sharing a little bit more about my approach to this project in the new year. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay, so you can see I already kind of set this album up, but I wanted to go through and share with you kind of my approach to my Mini-Me albums. If you are not familiar with these, I have done story albums like this since 2022, I think was the first one I did. And then in 23 and 24, I did two 6x8 albums. In 2025, I did a 10x8 and a mini 4x6. And I do have a couple of videos of those sharing kind of my process for 2025. I have some flip throughs of the older ones. I will link those in the description box below. But for this year, I decided to do it a little bit different. I am going to do two 10x8 albums. So I bought two of this album. Here's the second one. These are from Ali Edwards. I need to open this one up and set it up. And then I started kind of setting this up a little bit already. So I did my title page and I created a couple of layouts already. This one was with the January kits from Cocoa Daisy, and this one was with the February kits. So just some kind of like introduction. I also decided though this year that I want to do some dividers and really focus on more structure. In the past couple of years, I've just kind of added to these as I planned layouts and as stories happened. And what ended up happening was these were kind of on the back burner. And I still haven't even finished my 2023 ones. My 2025 ones are barely started. 2024, the second half of the year is barely started. There's a lot left to do. And I still plan to finish those and go back and fill in all those stories. But I also want to focus on 2026. So what I decided to do was create some dividers to designate the different months. So I decided to make these, and I made the January one here. I'm just gonna pull this one out as like a template, and then I'm gonna make all of them. But my plan for these is I'm cropping down a page protector to use the holes and two 3x4 pockets. And then this is a 4x6 card. I have these for the entire year from Ali Edwards Stories by the Month kits. And then I'm pulling two papers from my stash and I'm gonna crop them down to create this border around it to have an introduction to the month. Now I like this because it's allowing me to use a bunch of products from my stash. So I went through and pulled out the pattern papers that I wanna use for all of the months and my extra page protectors. And then I'm gonna just kind of adhere these together and then run them through the sewing machine. Then in these pockets, I'm not entirely sure yet what I want to do. What I'm thinking, so I have these cards, which came from Everyday Explorers. So I think I want to use these on the back of one as like a highlights, like a recap. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and slip that in. It is not exactly 3x4. It's a little narrower. So I'm probably going to have to adhere it to whatever's on the other side. And then I also have my kits from Cocoa Daisy each month. And I'm just gonna look through here really quickly for what I'm looking for. Each month, Cocoa Daisy includes these calendar cards. So let me see if I can find it. Okay, so I got this kit in sorts of shambles here, trying to find this. I'm really bad at keeping my kits organized, but at least they keep them corralled in these trays. So they have this card in every single month. There's a monthly calendar and I'm thinking of using these. Now I don't love these two colors together, but I could put it maybe just depending on what pattern paper I have and what it looks like. I might just put it on the back. I'm not sure. I think I want to use this though for every month. Maybe I'll put it on the back. And then I think I'm gonna fill the other of these with whatever I feel like for that month. So I'm thinking maybe I'll put this one on the back with this. I like those colors together. And then I could put a photo here. There's also this card in the January Stories by the Month, or not Stories by the January kit from Cocoa Daisy. And I think I wanna use that for January, and then I'll leave this for a photo. And there's not going to be that in every month. I was hoping they were going to do that every month. They didn't. I could actually probably make those for every month, but I think that right now I'm just going to want to try to use up some of my stash more. So I'm probably going to put just those and leave this spot for a photo. And then what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to put this away, is just work on putting all of these together in like an assembly line fashion. And then the other thing I want to do is decorate the spine. So this is probably gonna be pretty quick and easy to get all of these done. I will do like some music and voiceover for you guys. I'm not expecting this to be a very long video. I just kind of wanted to give you guys the setup of this album. I don't know why I opened it there, but here's my title page. And then this page is going to go right here. And then whatever stories I make for January are going to go after that. And then I'll have the February one. Now, these obviously don't go the full way across. That's fine. I might end up adding like tabs or something later in the year. Or if I think of it right now, like what I want to do. But right now, I think I just like it to kind of designate to me which months need a little bit more stories. I don't know that, or I don't anticipate actually creating those in that month like I do with Project Life. I think this is still going to be something that I work on when I have the time. And I'm going to still plan out my stories the same way I've done in the past few years. It's just this will give my album a little bit more structure. I'm also anticipating putting the first 6 months in this one, the second 6 months in that one. And the other thing I wanted to do was the spine labels, which I have the January stories by the month here. And this has these 2026 circles. There were also these 2026 stickers, and I used those on my Project Life albums, but I'm thinking I want to use these like this, and I'll just do like a 1 and a 2 to create those labels on the side. Maybe I'll use this stamp actually to stamp the 1 and the 2. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do the music / voiceover. I'm probably not going to film the entire process, but then I will pop back on at the end and do a flip through of what I've put together.
Okay, so I start with the binder labels, and I am so thrilled with how these came out. So I've done this quite a few times on a lot of my albums, and the first part is just to like get that piece of paper that's shoved in there out. I never reuse those papers. They're just kind of placeholders, but I am going to use them as measurement. I originally was going to do white, but then I realized that my 2026 label is white and the album has a lot of white, so I wanted to use a color. So I found just a cardstock in my stash that was a nice blue color that I thought looked good with the album. And then I'm pulling out the stamp set that came from January that coordinates with the Stories by the Month kit from Allie Edwards. And I'm going to stamp 1 and 2 for volumes 1 and 2 on here. Then I'm going to use these 2026 die cut pieces. I love these so much. I am so happy to use these for binder labels. You do have to trim a little bit off the edge to get them to fit, but I think that they are just perfect. So I'm going to trim them down. I'm just using my trimmer there. And then I just add a little bit of rolling adhesive to the album itself. So you can see as I slip that in, I just make sure it's where I want it to be, and then I press it down on that rolling adhesive so that it doesn't shift around and it just kind of stays straight in there because it never fits in there perfectly. And that was how those came together. Like I said, I love those so much. I was super happy with how they came out. Now I'm moving on to my dividers, and I'm going to have some mixed results with how these come out. I will talk through that a little bit as I get into it and the mistakes I made. I'm going to leave most of the footage on here so you can see that it's not all coming together perfectly for me. It never does. But, you know, we learn from it. It's okay. So I'm using a collection of pattern papers from my stash. I ended up using 23 different pattern papers, 2 per month, except for October. I used 1 because I liked both the front and the back, and I made that work. These are from a variety of manufacturers. Some of them are really old, so I don't even remember where they're from. A lot are Allie Edwards, Cocoa Daisy. I have some that are definitely Kelly Perky, like that blue one that I'm using for those houses, and possibly some other manufacturers, maybe some Studio Calico or something. I honestly don't remember. So I probably won't be able to tell you where I got specific papers from, or if I could, none of these are going to be available anymore. But this was just a great way to use up pattern papers in my stash. I just selected some patterns that kind of fit the theme of that month for me, or like the season. Some of them are personal to me. Like in November, I have one that has like a slight nod to Japanese style because I'm going to Japan in November, but most of them are just seasonal. So like February is hearts, March has rainbows, and you can just kind of see that as I go through and put these all together. This was just a really great way for me to use up some of my stash, and I'm super thrilled with that. The gold word, like 4x6 cards that I'm putting in their vellum, those are from the Stories by the Month kits from 2025. And so you got one per month, and I just decided to use those as kind of the jumping off point for my divider. I know Allie did something similar to this last year in her album, and she actually put together one for this year as well, which I saw before I did this voiceover, but not before I did the filming. But she used dividers, like plastic dividers that came from, I think it was the One Little Word release, and that definitely would make this a lot easier. But I wanted to just use what I had rather than purchase something new, because I really want to use up more of my stash. And I do have a large collection of, well, not that large, but a decent sized collection of pattern paper piling up now that I get a decent amount of those in kits. And I really want to make an effort to use some of that and put a dent in my stash this year. So it felt really good using these products for my stash. After I put together a couple of the months, I decided to go through and do these kind of in assembly line fashion. So I am trimming down all the page protectors, trimming down all the papers, and then I'm going to go through and adhere them all kind of together. I regret doing this. It definitely makes things a lot faster when you do it. But it turns out that some of my measurements were not ideal. And so some of these come out a little bit wonkier than I would have liked. And I will talk about that a bit later as you see how they come together. Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit through the issues that I ran into here. So you can see I'm just doing all of the cutting here. I'm cutting everything to 2¼ and I'm cutting it to 6 inches wide because the 4x6 cards are 6 inches wide. which, that's fine. My dividers are not going to be the full 10 by 8, and that's okay. That October paper there, that's the one that I really loved both sides. And unfortunately, I didn't have two pieces anymore, so I had to kind of make it work with both of them. So I am trimming all of these down to 2 1/4, which turns out is too small. I think the right measure is not fully 2 1/2 either. I think it's somewhere in the middle. And I think part of the problem is the page protectors. I trimmed all of those at once and put them kind of in a pile, but they're not all the same. So even though I believe all of my page protectors are from Inked brand, either from Allie Edwards or Studio Calico, I think that they change over time depending on when you got them, which album they came in, whether you bought them separate from an album. And so I have a bunch, and I just kind of treat them all the same, and they're not the same. So as I start putting these together, you can see here as I'm putting the July down that it does not overlap with the vellum piece pretty much at all. And that is going to cause a problem, because the goal here was that there would be a little bit of overlap between the paper and the vellum, so that the vellum card would just kind of stay inside that little groove. And then once I stitched everything together, it would never fall out. The problem is, because of the size of the paper and the page protector, I don't even know why, it was a little bit too close to the edge, and so the vellum piece just keeps popping out. I took this one over to my sewing machine because July was the one I was really struggling with, and I ended up stitching like across the middle, and I tried a whole bunch of different things to try to keep it in place, and nothing was working. Every time you moved the page, it would just like pop out, and the adhesive was too strong that I couldn't like pull it up and then move it down lower on the page protector. So I was kind of out of luck. What I ended up doing was going into my stash. You'll see in a few minutes, or few moments, not minutes. I will go into my stash and get some washi tape. It's like a blue with stars, which I thought fit for July. And I'm going to just put that along the edge of the vellum and the pattern paper in hopes that it will just hold it together. That was not really the look that I was going for, but it does work. And if you wanted to do something like this, but you don't use a sewing machine, I would suggest using washi tape. You could definitely use that. I think that you might need something a little bit stronger to hold it to the page protector itself than just washi tape, but with the rolling adhesive and washi, it might be sufficient. Maybe a couple staples could be added on there as well. But generally, you can see I'm using the rolling adhesive to adhere everything together, and that is not going to be strong enough on its own. But then when I run it through the sewing machine, I could just do some washi tape to hold the various pieces together. You would have to mess around with it. I think the sewing machine is probably the strongest way to do it, but definitely some options. So you can see there, I realized that I needed more space, so I actually trimmed another piece of this August one at 2 1/2 so that one would fit. And I did that for some of them. You'll see as I go through, I'm going to trim more pieces for some of the ones that I have additional pattern paper for, like this one here that was from the Week in the Life collection. I had enough where I could do a 2 1/2 on the bottom and then 2 1/4 at the top. And that worked, but not all of the pattern papers had enough leftover scraps so that I could do this. And so I ended up just kind of doing different things for each one. Also for October, when I get to that one, you'll see, because I only had the one piece of paper, I didn't even have enough to do it with 2 1/4 for each section. So I am going to end up adding some Halloween themed washi tape to that one and just giving it a little bit of a different look. But it doesn't really matter. The idea is still the same, to create these dividers. And although I had some issues with some of them, when I took a step back and came back and looked at it in another day, I was pretty happy with how they turned out. And I'm really happy that I have them in my album to help provide a little bit of structure.
Okay, so I'm mostly done with these dividers, and I have to say I struggled with them quite a bit. So I cut the pattern paper to 2 1/4, and as you saw, I tried to do them in kind of an assembly line fashion, and it didn't work because 2 1/4 was too small for some of them. So July ended up extremely wonky. I added some washi tape to try to hold it in place, but it just doesn't lay flat, and I don't think there's really anything I can do to fix that. I could pull it apart and try to like redo it, but I don't have another one of these. I don't have more of the paper, so I'd have to start over with different paper. So I'm just gonna leave it, and then when it gets to July, if I decide I don't like it, I will redo it. But for now, I'm just gonna go ahead and kind of slip these in here and show you what was going on. So there's January, here's February. So most of them worked out okay, but it turned out that the pattern paper needed to be larger for some of them. And so some of them, it like doesn't really stay in. So if it's not super tight, like this one, it's kind of falling out a little. I was able to fix some of them with stitching or move the stuff around and put like washi tape. Like that's what I did on June here. I adjusted it, put washi tape. Some of them I recut some of the pieces to fit. I don't know exactly why they were the way they were, but they're a little wonky. But I think overall they're mostly, like this one is one that's not really fitting. So the idea was that the vellum piece would be sandwiched between the two pieces of cardstock, and it was, but some of them it just kind of pops out and it just won't lay flat inside there. That one I guess is one like that. Like I can kind of get it in, but then it keeps falling back out. So maybe I'll add a little washi onto this one, and hopefully that will hold that one in place. Most of them I think turned out good. And then on top of all of the issues I had with it, the sizing, my sewing machine kept jamming. And so I have a few like this one where I had to restitch it. And so it ended up a little wonky, but I think mostly it's gonna be fine. There's June. And then I'm just gonna go ahead and slip these guys in for now. And the rest of this, I will kind of figure out what goes in the pockets, see if I need to do anything to adjust any of them when I get to it. I wish they were a little bit cleaner looking, but I guess that's always going to be the case when you're kind of Frankensteining something together. But I definitely learned a lot. So if you wanted to do something similar, just make sure to be very careful with your measurements. You want the top and the bottom to be large enough so that you can sandwich the 4x6 in between, so that it will not pop in and out, but you need it to not be so big that it covers up too much of the text. So that's part 1. And then let's do part 2 here. Part 2 starting with July, which this is the one super wonky, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, this is gonna be the first one in the new book. And then this book has all these page protectors that came in here. I'm just gonna leave them for now because I'm not even thinking about the second half. Wait, what am I doing? I'm not even thinking about the second half of 2026 yet. I'm just setting this up so that I have it. And of course, this one, I did the page protectors upside down. I knew I was gonna end up doing that for one. So the things are slipping in the bottom. I'm probably gonna have to stitch that off to prevent them from falling out. But it is what it is. Okay, so these last few, I still need to pull the threads through, tie them off. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that with some music on and finish this up. I guess mostly what I wanted to say is I'm not super thrilled with how these came out, but I'm really happy that I was able to use some of my stash, and I think that they will serve their purpose to create dividers for my stories. I think once I start slipping things into the pocket as I get to each month, I can adjust it if needed. I do really like the idea. So if you wanted to do something similar, just be careful with your measurements. Whenever you do something sewing too, it's always going to be a little imperfect. My sewing machine was really just fighting back today. But my goal with this is just to have a space where I can put at least like 1 or 2 spreads per month and hold just some of those extra stories, use some of those pieces I have from the Stories by the Month and the Storyteller Kit and my Cocoa Daisy kit, and yeah, just really document 2026. I also wanted to say that this is a supplementary project on top of Project Life, which is my primary documenting. So if I only end up with 1 or 2 layouts a month, I'm totally okay with that. If I end up with certain events and things not documented in here, I'm also totally okay with that because they will be documented in Project Life.
Thank you guys so much for being here. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. And as always, I hope to see you guys all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.